Welcome to European History with Dr. Brovkin. We continue the study of French Enlightenment, the Age of Reason, and today's session is devoted to a very uh, minor figure. Most people don't know anything about him, but he's extremely important and you will see why. His name is Jean Meslier. Jean Meslier, who lived from 1678 to 1733. So he died before the encyclopedia got going, before anything happened, and as I said, he left completely unknown. Why is he left completely unknown? Because he wrote a book that wasn't published until 1833, 100 years after his death. And the reason of that you will see for yourself why that is so, because of the kinds of things he said. The book is called My Testament. The book was never meant to be published. He did not write it to be published. He wrote pretty much for himself. He was a priest. All he was a village priest. And he was thinking about religion and Christianity. And these are the kinds of thought he came up with, which are absolutely extraordinary. He predicted, well, he not predicted, but he expressed ideas that would soon be picked up by all kinds of people, including Diderot, and then later on Karl Marx and Adam Smith and many, many others. But as I said, his purpose is not enlightenment. His purpose is conversation with himself in this book that we're talking about. Basically, it is the most powerful rejection of Christianity that had ever existed. When I checked him out on Google, what do people say about him now? He is basically known as the ardent atheist or extreme atheists that in a company with communists and Karl Marx and others. He starts out with asking a whole bunch of questions that basically are logical in terms of if you read the Bible as Martin Luther and Calvin asked people to do. You read and you think, and then you have a bunch of questions. So he comes with all sorts of questions that are difficult to answer. For example, official version is that Jesus Christ was of lineage of King David. Now then he asks the question, how could that be? If he is the son of God, how could be of a lineage of David? Okay, through his mother, maybe, but his mother was not of the royal stock. She was just a simple woman married to a carpenter. Then, of course, the question that everybody asked way before him, how could it be that Joseph wasn't the father? I mean, can you imagine a situation that it would be a husband that lives with a woman and she's his wife, and then they don't make children, and that God does it for him? It just doesn't make any sense. Was he impotent or something? How could it be that he's the husband and there is no children? And the child that appears is supposed to be from God. And then how do you explain the fact that he had older brothers? That the Bible says, oh, they're not real brothers. They're kind of like spiritual brothers. So these are the kinds of questions he comes up with questioning. Then he goes on, what about miracles? A whole lot of Christianity is based on miracles, that Jesus could make, water into wine is one of them, and other things. And so this is what he writes. I quote directly. I will not sacrifice reason, because reason alone enables me to distinguish good and evil, true and false. My senses, my experience, I trust. So basically he's saying miracles sound very nice, but they're improbable, impossible, and from the point of view of reason, it cannot be. It's just an invention. Then he goes on to discuss Protestantism, and especially what he objects to is the idea of a few chosen, predestination. He's completely against the predestination idea. And he says the following, and I quote, how could any civilized person believe in God who would condemn his creatures to everlasting hell? Now, as we know, both the Catholics and basically all versions of Christianity do have a concept of hell, including Islam. Where he says no, that it just cannot be. If God is what you say is omnipotent, that if he can do anything and knows everything, how could he condemn most of the people as sinners? How could he condemn most of his people, his creatures, to not just to punishment, everlasting hell? And from the point of view of this reasoning, the Protestants are even worse, because it's only a few chosen ones who are predestined to go to paradise. Everybody else goes to hell. Total absurdity. It just doesn't make any sense. Um, he says, I quote, "From this point of view, this kind of God is infinitely more wicked than most of the wickedest of men." Now, to have the courage to write that God is wicked and more wicked than the wickedest of men would be absolutely courageous. I mean, if they found out this, he would be, I don't know what they would do to him, quarter him, burn him several times over, because this is worse, way, way worse critique than anything else that we have seen from other philosophers. He also goes on to say, if indeed, he continues to reason, God is omnipowerful and he can do everything, why does he send wars, hurricanes, tempests? Why do children have to die who are completely innocent of any sin? And he concludes, God is a mental creation to instill fear in men or in people. That's the only purpose. So the people are afraid they created this creature that they call God. Now, if he had stopped at this, that would be absolutely incredible as well. But he goes on much further. And actually, he's one of the very, very few who actually do not criticize the church and religion and God as such, but Christianity. Because usually Jesus is portrayed as a good guy. He's going around, he's teaching to love everybody, to give forgiveness as a kind of a very positive figure, even among those who are atheists and who deny the idea of God. Not so with Meslier. He attacks Jesus as well. So let's look at his arguments. He starts with the Father, of course. Why would you find any father among human beings who would willingly send his son to die? And his answer is no. No normal father would send his son to die. That's anti-natural. That's unnatural. Natural is the key word here. This is unnatural. In other words, Christianity begins with unnatural proposition. Then this is where the key of it is, where he's totally different from everybody else. Everybody is positive of Jesus. Jesus is good, Jesus is kind, Jesus teaches you loving, come to Jesus, all this whole Christianity. Not so with Meslier. He's a Catholic priest who is saying this. Look at this. Jesus is a fanatic, misanthrope, who preaching the incomprehensible advices to the poor. He teaches them to combat nature, to hate pleasure, to seek suffering, and to despise themselves. Absolutely unbelievable critique of Christianity, because that is a part of Christianity. Yes, you're not supposed to seek human pleasures. Yes, you're not supposed to cater to the whims of your body. You're supposed to be chastity, poverty, and obedience. All of these three he denies. A Catholic priest denies. It's unnatural to deny yourself sexual pleasure. It is unnatural to go around dirty and deny yourself the basic needs of your body. It is unnatural to seek suffering. You should seek pleasure. You should seek joy. All of that is absent from Christianity. Why such a weird religion would conquer so many people is incomprehensible to Meslier. He also says it's impracticable. It's contrary to human nature. Here's the key fact, guys. Christianity is contrary to human nature. The way people are, is not the way Jesus wants them to be. Therefore, it's contrary to human nature, says Meslier. Religion relies on obscurity, mystery, fables, miracles, and incredible things that are not true. They cannot be found in nature. Religion is based on superstition and fables that the powerful teach to the weak. Here's a quote from him that could easily be Karl Marx. If we read these words, you probably wouldn't know if it was Meslier. I would have thought, without knowing, that that would be Karl Marx. Here's the quote. Religion has been a part of conspiracy between the church and the state to frighten the people into convenient obedience and absolute rule. Now, Karl Marx put the same idea in somewhat different way when he said religion is the opium of the people. Religion is based on duplicity. Here's another quote. Those who preach charity, harmony, and peace have shown themselves to be most ferocious cannibals and savages of any time. He's referring to endless religious wars. He's referring to Night of Saint Bartholomew. So it's based on duplicity. Those who preach charity and harmony and peace have shown themselves to be more ferocious than cannibals and savages of any time. In terms of contemporary society, he basically says the church, the Catholic Church, and the state are, listen to this, is a gigantic conspiracy against man and reason. The church and the state are a conspiracy against humanity, against human beings and reason, their capacity to think and make conclusions. Because those who rule in the name of God are, here's a quote, worthy of Karl Marx or even Lenin. Those who rule are tyrants, courtiers, extortionists, unscrupulous magistrates, impostors, adulterers, prostitutes, thieves, and rogues of all kinds. Can you imagine a Catholic priest in a French village looking about France of his age, looking at the king and his court, about the magistrate and about the people in the Parlement of Paris who are so self-righteous that they like to burn books and burn people. They're tyrants, unscrupulous impostors, adulterers, prostitutes, thieves, and rogues of all kinds. This is the kind of condemnation of his own society. We're not done yet. What is to be done? The best morality is formed, he says, upon reason and intelligence. This is the shining beacon. Only your reason and intelligence and education, he says, and I quote, reason and intelligence, not religion, will improve men. Only that. And finally, one more quote. Tired of incomprehensible theology, fables, mysteries, let human mind preoccupy itself with natural things, sensible truths, useful knowledge. Let thought and speech be free in a secular education. Now that looks pretty much like a program of Diderot and Helvetius and Holbach. Secular education comes from the word of a village priest. Today's social order, this is like Karl Marx. Here's a direct quote. Small minority of idly rich and corrupt with luxury who live at the expense of millions of men, millions of men who live in degrading poverty and ignorance. One more depiction of contemporary France. A root cause of all evil, and then again sounds kind of like Karl Marx, is theft of property. Property is theft. Property is enslavement. This would be something that would be written by 19th century French philosophers, including later Karl Marx. Proudhon would be the one who would say in 1830s, property is theft. Meslier is saying it 100 years earlier, in 1730s. What we need, says Meslier, this is the final accord that is fantastic. What we need is a revolution to overthrow the conspiracy of the few against the many, that revolution will be justified. This is, of course, an incredible document as a concluding word. It's a call for revolution. It's against the established order. It's against religion, Catholic Church, social injustice. It's probably more powerful than any other. But it was only published in small extracts by Diderot in 1772, who knew about it, but in full only in 1830s, 100 years later. So, now that you see that we discover new things, put your likes, subscribe to AP European History with Dr. Brovkin, and that will be it for today. Thanks.